Is this the silence before the storm in Campi Flegrei, or is it getting quiet? Is the system recharging? We have the new INGV bulletin that has been released with the data until last week, until February 23rd, and there was an accelerated ground uplift. And it was caused by this earthquake swarm, this massive earthquake swarm that we have seen at Campi Flegrei. Very unusual, never seen before. Something not normal. And I've reported about this, guys. Many scientists started to speak out. This is not normal. Don't believe what officials are telling you. This is normal. It's always been like this. Watch my videos about this. It's a really, really interesting insight of leading scientists that are working for the INGV and the Vesuvius Observatory. This is where the bulletin comes from. So Campi Flegrei, near Naples, near almost 6 million people. Not a stratovolcano like Vesuvius, for example. It's a caldera composed of several calderas, spans an area of 100 kilometers also into the water, into the Gulf of Pozzuoli, and it has been rumbling in the water with epicenters, but also most of the epicenters where the most active crater is the Solfatara, basically in the middle of Pozzuoli. We have seen now that the level of seismicity is definitely reduced. So if we look at the list of earthquakes here, we had on February 19th, 2 in a row, 3.1, 3.0, which was also out of the ordinary. And then it kept coming with 1.5 on the 20th with 2.3. So it was going a little bit, but you know, the days before, these pages, we had like 2 pages like this just for one day. Now it's, I don't want to say back to normal because I just told you this is not normal, but back to how that swarm at Campi Flegrei was behaving before. A few earthquakes every day. We see this on the 20th, we see this on the 21st and on the 22nd. And we're also starting to see this playing ball between Vesuvius and Campi Flegrei again. But it's not that Campi Flegrei is completely quiet, that nothing's happening there. On the 25th, a 1.1. And then we have to see from now on, what does that mean? What is going on? We are in a current bradyseismic phase that started in 2005, where the land is rising continuously. And this rumbling over the last few days, several days, was nerve-wracking for the residents. It basically started February 9th, and it was rumbling in the higher magnitudes, very, very shallow. Now the residents have a little bit of time, hopefully a little more, to breathe, to mentally and physically recover from that threat, because they were worried that their homes might collapse. Officials were telling them the homes might collapse, and then there's still the threat that there could be a bigger earthquake. The scientists at the moment say, well, maximum would be 5.1, but another scientist from the INGV, I reported about this, says, well, how do you calculate this? Is that for sure? So there's right now, it's not that, okay, it's gotten slower, let's go back to our daily lives. The residents demand answers. They demand really serious interventions from the government regarding the stability of their homes, at least to protect the homes from seismic events. If there's an eruption, well, what can you do? It doesn't matter whether your house collapses or not. But yeah, it does matter if it collapses on escape routes. That's not good. So they're having meetings, they're protesting on the streets, so they're trying to figure this out. With more and more warnings of scientists, and with more and more events that we're seeing at Campi Flegrei, with more and more studies coming out, the officials can't really do nothing anymore. They have to do at least something. And again, I think, and I feel that people still don't understand this, because the officials are telling people and the international press something different. They're saying a bradyseismic that has always been normal, this up and down, and these earthquakes, it's always been normal. Campi Flegrei always does this. It's not true. Watch my video about this. I just want to give you a quick summary of what I have said in this video, because this is crucial to understand what might be happening at this volcano. You can't just push this aside and say it's always been like this. There's a reason why it is doing it. And remember, Giuseppe Di Natale, he's a seasoned scientist and researcher in a leading position at the INGV, the Vesuvius Observatory. I just reported about this. He says, you know, these bradyseismic phases with the land rise, the land is rising and the earthquakes are appearing. Always when we look at past eruptions, and they just found evidence of another eruption about 108,000 years ago. Before they always thought, oh, it's like 40,000 years ago, but now they found evidence of another one. So what they found and what the scientific research says, according to Giuseppe Di Natale. So these bradyseismic phases have a meaning. They only occurred a few decades before an eruption and then after the eruption. And the last two eruptions had these bradyseismic events before an eruption. So what does that mean? Something's waking up in this volcano, and that's why the threat level is rising. There could be something brewing and there could be an eruption, and many scientists are not ruling this out anymore. Let's have a look at the bulletin. So this gives us a summary of the activity status at Campi Flegrei between February 17th and February 23rd. There was about, that's what they're saying, a preliminary of total of 610 earthquakes. That's a lot, with a magnitude of above 0, and also maximum magnitude that they measured within that time frame was 3.2, which is high for Campi Flegrei for volcanic earthquakes. What about the land rise? You see the graphic here. So if we look at last August, the average uplift rate in the area of maximum deformation has been approximately 1 centimeter per month. And between February 15th, that's when they say that swarm started. If you look at the list, it started, in my opinion, on February 9th, but February 15th, it got even more intense. So just in one day, between the 15th and the 16th, the uplift was 1 centimeter. So in one day, it was lifting up as much as it did in a whole month. But then after February 16, it went back to the normal rate, 1 centimeter per month, but it is rising. They also say that they have not monitored any variations in the geochemical parameters during that reference week. But they say there's an ongoing trend of increasing fluid emissions and hydrothermal system heating. So they say there's a temperature sensor that is installed at a fumarole emission site in that Solfatara crater. They always have to install it 5 meters away from the main fumarole at the Peschiarelli area. They can't get so close. Average temperature was about 97 degrees Celsius over the past week. So they are seeing that there's increased fluid emissions and hydrothermal system heating. What is heating that system? What is cooking down there? What is cooking the hydrothermal system? So if we look at Campi Flegrei, it's not only powered by just one kind of magma, it has layers. It's like a geological lasagna in layer shifts. So at the deepest level, around 8 kilometers or more, you've got like a magma. It's a darker, more liquid lava with less silica, about 50 to 55%. It flows easier, like syrup, because it is hotter. It's around 1,100 degrees Celsius hot, and therefore it is less sticky. So if that magma came to the surface, if that was just a solo eruption, we would see something like that we're seeing in Hawaii's Kilauea, like lava fountains, slow rivers of lava, not very explosive. But here's the twist at Campi Flegrei. That runny magma that we have down there doesn't stay runny as it rises at Campi Flegrei. It cools, it mixes with the crust, and it transforms into silica magma. It's called trachyte or phonolite. And that's the troublemaker at Campi Flegrei. So trachyte magma has a silica content of 60 to 62%. Phonolite hits 65% of silica. So the more silica we have in the magma, the thicker, the stickier the magma is, like molasses, right? Not syrup anymore. So it's loaded with gases, with water, CO2, and sulfur, and it's trapped inside because it's so viscous. The temperatures then, with this kind of magma, they drop to around 900 to 1000 degrees Celsius, and it sits in shallower chambers at depth of 3 to 6 kilometers. They just discovered last year that there's a shallow magma chamber at roughly 3.9 kilometers, so not far from the surface. They previously thought it's down deeper at like 7 to 8 kilometers. So why does this all matter? Why am I telling you this? So the magma that's deeper down there, the deeper magma lets bubbles of gas, releases bubbles of gas when it moves. It's like a simmering pot. You have to imagine like this. And then the silicic magma traps them, building up pressure, like a sealed pressure cooker. This is how you have to imagine this. And when this magma blows, that is not gentle, guys. It's not gentle. It's a violent blast. And we've just recently heard of a study that said that the shallow magma is already in a very explosive state. So it might not give us a lot of warning time before it might cause an eruption. So it would be a violent blast. And that's why in the past, these big eruptions, like they call it the Campanian ignimbrite, were so destructive at Campi Flegrei. Like silicic magma turned into ash clouds and glowing avalanches racing across the land, destroying everything in its path. So scientists are trying to find out, to learn more about this system. So that's why we basically say, well, these scientists are digging into the rocks for clues. They're looking for melt inclusions, tiny, tiny magma droplets that are trapped in crystals. And the research shows that the shallow stuff that is there at Campi Flegrei is phonolytic, gas rich, and primed to pop. Explosive state. And then the deeper lying magma, the syrup, is recharging that system, that more shallow system, injecting heat and pressure. But it's the sticky, evolved layer on the top that drives the eruption style. And the gas emissions are backing this up. The fumaroles at Peschiarelli, they're releasing up to 4,500 tons of CO2 per day. And the sulfur dioxide content is rising. We just heard it in the bulletin. So high CO2 could mean deep magma is degassing. And SO2 hints at a shallow movement, shallow. And the big question right now is, are we just dealing with hot water right now, or is there something bigger? But what we take away from this and what we need to understand, underneath the Campi Flegrei caldera, there's a cocktail of magma types, and each has its own personality, so to speak. And the kinds of magmas decide how an eruption might play out at Campi Flegrei, whether it's a slow leak or a catastrophic explosion. There's a professor of volcanology, his name is Christopher Kilburn. He works at the University College in London, and he sums it up quite well. He says, if you stretch something for long enough, it's going to break somewhere. And he's talking about the caprock layer of Campi Flegrei. He says Campi Flegrei is stretching right now, and the magma that's beneath it holds the clues. And unfortunately, we know the caprock layer only has a third of its strength left when we had the last bradyseismic event in the 1980s. And what he's meaning, you can stretch that rubber band, stretch it until it reaches the point of maximum elasticity, and then it bursts. So now let's picture what could happen if Campi Flegrei really wakes up. It is awake right now, but it really wants to cause an eruption. So with this magma mix, we've got a few options, right? First, a small eruption, which is, if there is an eruption at the moment, they say the most likely eruption, like we've seen in Monte Nuovo in 1538. But even there, they said in a very, very short period of time, the ground was rising 17 meters before the eruption. But that was phonolytic magma, not a huge amount. So that eruption kicked off with earthquakes, and then a crack opened, spitting ash and lava out for days. So if that was to happen right now, think localized chaos, like roads blocked, ash dusting Naples, maybe a new mountain is formed, like this Monte Nuovo, translated this means new mountain. Stefano Carlino, he works at the Vesuvius Observatory, he says it's more likely to be small than large. It might just settle down, rising and falling gently, and then go back to sleep. Next possibility, a moderate eruption. So if more shallow silicic magma gets involved, more of the molasses magma, you'd see bigger ash plumes, maybe pyroclastic flows, hot gas and rock tumbling downhill at roughly 100 miles per hour, like explosive. Probably like a moderate eruption wouldn't drain the whole magma chamber, but it would disrupt life in this area for weeks. Naples could choke on ash, flights would stall, evacuations would scramble. And then we have the worst case scenario, a mega eruption, a supervolcanic eruption like 39,000 years ago. If shallow phonolithic magma taps a massive recharge from below, you're looking at a caldera collapse. So ash would darken the skies for months across continents, guys. Continents, not countries, continents. Pyroclastic flows would bury towns. The word with the C that I can't say on YouTube, because then I get a banner underneath my video with some education over that C, that it's man-made and all that stuff. Although this has nothing to do with volcanoes, but I guess by now you know what I mean, and I'm not talking about the weather forecast. So that would take a hit. Giuseppe Mastrolorenzo, I've talked about him in many, many videos. He's also the one that's ringing the alarm right now, that you have to prepare for an eruption as well, not only for the seismic events. So he warns that this eruption could threaten all of metropolitan Naples, more than 6 million people, with barely any notice, because it's already in an explosive state. That's what he's saying. And you know, the scientists think that this ancient blast that Campi Flegrei produced played a role in the extinction of the Neanderthals, right? That's quite a scale. And we're also talking about a volcanic winter for quite a while. Food would only last for 74 days in various areas around the world. So that would have impacts on the whole world. So why can't we nail down what will happen if something happens? Because it's a tangle of unknown, guys. So first, we don't know the exact volume of the magma. We know it is a small pocket at is it a small pocket? Is it a giant reservoir? We can guess from seismic waves how they travel through the ground. We can estimate magma chambers. We can look at gas leaks. We can look at ground tilt. The trigger is also a wild card. Quakes could crack the chamber, or gas pressure might hit that 200 MPa tipping point. But how close are we? That's the big question. Monte Nuovo was rumbling for months before it was erupting. But the big ones, might have taken less time, less warning time. That's what Mastro Lorenzo said. The sticky magma hides the clues, unlike the runny stuff. So it doesn't shake as obviously when it's go time. That's the problem. So the monitoring is a guessing game too. And remember, the scientists, you have to watch these videos on the end screen, because that gives you so much background knowledge about what the scientists are ringing the alarm right now. Because they said, well, if the INGV officially says, and the officials are saying, we're monitoring this thing. He says, monitoring doesn't guarantee safety. That's what they're saying, because it's a guessing game. The ground is lifting up over a meter. I think like almost 1.5 meters since 2005. And then thousands of quakes last year, with the highest ever, a magnitude 4.4. In May, like a swarm of 150 just per night. And now we had that monstrous swarm. So also Monte Nuovo had months of rumbling. Gas is pouring out, but the problem is the signals are overlapping right now. The problem is, guys, and I wish I could tell you something else, but small or big eruptions could look the same until they don't. So Mauro Di Vito, he's the boss of the INGV, he says, well, we're reasonably confident we won't have an eruption in short term, and our system could give us advance notice. But his colleague Mastro Lorenzo counters. He said a big one could hit with only a few hours. And that's a problem, because even their evacuation plan is saying we need 72 hours to evacuate everyone safely. If nobody has panic, if no roads are clogged, if the earthquakes that come prior to an eruption have not collapsed any buildings that would fall and block the evacuation routes, it won't work. My opinion, my personal opinion. Roll the dice on the warning time. How much warning? That is what they need to know, but they don't. So the sticky magma is the curveball. So the runny stuff shakes early. We've seen this in Iceland and in Hawaii, weeks or months, but thick gas-rich magma builds pressure quietly, guys, and that's the danger. In 1538, people got months of warning with Monte Nuovo. If there's a supervolcanic eruption, like a mega eruption again, maybe weeks, maybe hours. That's what also Mastro Lorenzo is saying. So they want to evacuate the red zone in 72 hours, more than 500,000 people. It was already a mess when that 4.4 hit last year, just in the little town of Pozzuoli. And don't you think that people in Naples, when they feel something's happening, that they don't have panic and try to get out? Then more than 6 million people are clogging narrow roads and only one major highway to get out of there, the Tangenziale. Do you think that'll work? That's why Giuseppe Di Natale, I've just reported about him, what he's been saying, and that's kind of scary, in my yesterday's video. I'll put them in the end screen, guys. Watch them. Trust me, watch them. It's mind-blowing what these scientists have to say and what they're warning us. Because he also says, I've been saying it since 2018. Let's move people out gradually. Let that area die off. But there's tourists, there's interests of builders. There's a lot of infight going on there right now. I've reported about all of this. So Mastro Lorenzo says, well, in terms of evacuation, if there's a big one coming, it might be hours. Hours might be it for the worst case scenario. So the people in Pozzuoli and in this area, they're living with this uncertainty. How is life in Pozzuoli? Tense. People keep their emergency bags packed, basically. One resident said, quote, we live in constant anxiety, the slightest tremor and people run. So what's next? Scientists don't know. It could go back to sleep, take a nap for a few centuries, puff out a small eruption, or it could rewrite history with a supervolcanic eruption. This is if not the most surveilled volcano in the world. So the scientists are on it, but nature keeps its secrets. That's the problem. So Kilburn puts it best. He says, quote, "We use a bit of imagination to work out what the signals mean. So we watch, we wait, and we learn." And then he was asked, well, what do you think? Could this giant surprise us? He said, everything's possible, right? So guys, I hope you liked this update and this insight to look underneath Campi Flegrei. If you did, please leave this video a like and subscribe for more. And really, guys, check out these videos in the end screen. I also have a playlist for Campi Flegrei. It's interesting stuff, really, that you should know, because I feel that somehow the officials are trying to keep the lid on. Yeah, the mantle of, it's all good, it's always been like this, don't worry. But the scientists of their own institutions are trying to poke that lid and saying, no, it's not, it's not. If you want to support the channel, become a supporting member. There's a membership level where you can see behind the scenes stuff, outtakes, and about my personal life. Click the join button or click the link in the description. And if you want to support the channel buying me some coffees, go to my buymeacoffee.com/silky site and support me there. And it's greatly appreciated. Thank you so much, guys, for doing that with your supers, the coffees, and the memberships. Welcome to the new members to the channel. And I hope to see you soon in one of my other videos. Stay on the pulse, guys. Bye.